Hello, my name is Emil Sorger. I am an instructional designer who works primarily with educators in the wellness industry. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about embodiment and how embodiment is relevant to online learning. Before I jump in, I would ask you to reflect for a moment as an educator on how it feels when you are really embodying, when you're really owning something that you're teaching, and how that can be beneficial to your students and their ability to really hear what you're saying and understand. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk today about how narrative, interpersonal connection, and self-reflection can help student teachers gain confidence and competence. So first, I'd like to talk a bit about embodied learning. What is it and why is it relevant? So embodied learning can be thought of as a physical practice, so in this case yoga, but it can also be thought of as learning something in a way that brings in more than just the knowledge, just the intellectual side of it. So when we're thinking about embodied learning, elements that are important are going to be vulnerability, intersubjectivity, and community. And these are elements within a course that are going to be useful. Then we have the primacy of the student-teacher relationship, and that experiential learning can really lead to successful integration of new material for teachers. So in the two courses that I'm going to be talking about, I found that there was a complementary dynamic through these different forms of intelligence based on Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. So on one side we have intrapersonal intelligence, which has to do with knowing oneself, and interpersonal intelligence, which has to do with being able to connect with others. On the other side, we have bodily kinesthetic intelligence, which in this case refers to mastering the techniques, mastering the material that the students were learning, and verbal linguistic intelligence, which has to do with their ability to articulate what they're teaching effectively. So intrapersonal intelligence is subjective. It's meaningful, meaning that the student connects to something deeper in their lives. And it's oriented towards insight and connection. Bodily kinesthetic and verbal linguistic intelligence is objective, it's technical, and it's oriented towards precision and propagation so that the student teachers can go into their communities and teach what they learned. The first course I'll be talking about is called Form Function Flow. It is a synchronous course, and it used written and pre-recorded content. There were live meetings, discussion boards. There was a lot of practice teaching, and that was done in a Zoom round-robin format, which I'm going to talk about. There were also assignments and feedback between instructors and students. The second course was called Recipes for Joy. It was primarily about breathing techniques and helping student teachers learn to integrate new breathing techniques into their extant teaching practice. It was taught in some instances synchronously and some asynchronously. There were a series of recorded practices that they would go along with, as well as written material. And then the primary way of sharing was through discussion boards and through a live meeting. At the end of the course, each student also had an assignment to create their own class. So the main themes for this presentation are going to be narrative, integration, and praxis. Start with narrative and talk about how the ability of a student to tell a story was really significant when it came to their introductions, as part of discussions and assignments, as part of written and spoken reflections, and within video conferences. So we found in the course that in the two courses that the teacher's introduction really worked because they showed vulnerability. They established the context for how they would be teaching and what they would be teaching, and they articulated the priorities that they had for their students. A lot of this was done in a narrative or storytelling kind of way, which students were really able to relate to and feel invited into the course based on that. The students in their introductions then were able to share a bit about their background, their interest in the course, and voice the expectations that they had. When it came to the discussion boards and the assignments that the students were contributing to and submitting, we found that there was a very even split between students talking about the technical learning, so that bodily kinesthetic and verbal linguistic intelligence, and their intrapersonal experiences when engaging with the material. We also found that especially those intrapersonal experiences helped to create a situation where there was interpersonal connection because students were able to relate to one another based on similar shared experience. The opportunities for reflection that the teachers provided were through assignments. So often the assignments included some technical prompts as well as some reflective prompts in which students thought about how what they were learning related with the rest of their lives. There were also office hours offered in which students and teachers could connect one-on-one and discuss the material and reflect. And then among the cohort, so in an open setting, discussion boards were very active. Students shared a lot about their experiences, again, both from the objective and subjective point of view. And the conference calls became real breeding grounds for bonding and connection. So the video conferences, as I said, created a lot of bonding. Part of what we attributed that to was that the technical learning was more housed within the pre-recorded and written content that the students could engage with asynchronously. And when the students were all together in a video conference, they really wanted to get to know one another better. That within the video conferences as well, the intrapersonal experiences that the students were having became good ways to connect with other students, to share about similar experiences, and to share about challenges when it came to ultimately integrating that into their teaching. And that all of that created an environment of openness. So next I'm going to talk about integration, and this really refers to how students were able to take what they learned and bring it into their teaching practice. So primary to that was the student-teacher relationship, that there was a sense of gentleness exhibited by the teacher, that students were able to learn by virtue of pre-recorded and live classes, and that they had many opportunities to do practice teaching in different formats. So I just have a few audio clips of students and teachers talking about this relationship. The first is a teacher talking about how she was able to build on pre-existing trust that she had gained in real life. If you were to think of what you would attribute that to, that they felt comfortable enough and safe enough in order to do that, what do you think?
I mean, honestly, I think some of that comes from the offline interactions that we had.
Okay.
So I feel in the trainings that I've done, especially the smaller trainings, and there were quite a bit of people who participated from trainings that were, 12 to 18 people, mm-hmm. where there's this real kind of intimacy and trust. I felt that they set the tone. Especially the early people contributing online were people who trusted me. And I think it set the tone for others who didn't, to feel like it wasn't just me as a teacher analyzing them, but it was in the context of a whole community that was expressing vulnerability and creativity and being celebrated mm-hmm. for that, rather than trying to perform something technical.
Okay, and then the next clip I have is a teacher referring to the quality of attention that, it's a student referring to the quality of attention that the teacher gave.
I think a lot of it is we embody it and we teach it from our experience, and having really sort of that other dimension of having someone see something that you're not seeing and then give you that feedback for it. So for example, like with body mapping, she focuses a lot on body mapping, and you have that experience first where you're really embodying the body map, you're within mm-hmm. your own mm-hmm. practice, mm-hmm. and then you're trying to make sense of it to teach it. But if you're missing a piece, or if it's not resonating with this student as really being authentic in how you're teaching, you're really missing the whole thing, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. The delivery is not whole. And that for me was a huge sort of fear with not really truly teaching the Katona method until after I did the course, was that I was always was fearful of not including a piece so that it didn't feel whole and complete for the student. And Mary Dana really gave me that that feedback so that I felt comfortable moving into teaching the practice. So for me, it was huge. And I would not truthfully, without doing this particular course, I would not be teaching in a Katona style.
So I thought that was just a nice way that she shared how the teacher's feedback and attention contributed to her confidence when it came to teaching. And then we have the need for gentleness. And the reason that I wanted to prioritize talking about this is because I think that online courses cover the technical side of learning very well, because they are built in software and they're encountered through a screen. And what that does, and what I've seen that do within these courses, is it creates a sense of safety. This idea that if there is a wall around your garden, then paradise can exist within it. And so, but in order for that sense of paradise and that sense of being able to grow to occur, the teacher's gentleness was really essential. And specifically what I mean by that is allowing the students space to really interpret the material and to teach it as themselves, rather than having a strong pre-existing sense of how it should be taught. And then I'll also talk a bit now about the benefits of pre-recorded and live classes, especially in terms of the objective-subjective learning. So the pre-recorded classes we found were technically rich. There was a lot of information in them, and that students were able to access them on their own time, especially if they were pre-recorded in short videos rather than in one long video. That those videos would be topic specific, so students could really go exactly where they needed to when it came to that objective learning. When it came to live classes, it was much more chance for a communal experience, for everyone to feel like they could be together, and for the teacher to exhibit their own interpersonal intelligence. The students were able to see the teachings in action the way that the teachers exhibited it, and they were able to feel seen because the teachers always acknowledged their presence. And then practice teaching was a really huge way in which these student teachers were able to integrate the material. And practice teaching was offered in a variety of different ways. So I just have another sound clip of a student speaking about her experience with practice teaching.
I think with the recording, I really personally tried to teach something I was very uncomfortable teaching, because she really gave me really good feedback, like the first round. So I knew that going into the second and third, I think we did 3, second and third, that I could teach something that I would not teach to a public setting, like to a teacher practice, because I knew I could make mistakes and she would give me really honest feedback and a way to move, not only honest feedback, but also like a way to move forward and how to teach it really well. Or she would let me know that it didn't feel authentic. With the teacher's practice, I think I taught things that I knew how to teach already, but she definitely still found lots of ways to make it much, much, much stronger.
So what she's speaking about here is the difference between an assignment in which the students pre-recorded themselves offering a small part of a class, and that was only visible in the case that she's describing to the teacher, and they were able to have a private dialogue about it. And then when she refers to the teacher's practice, it's a Zoom round robin in which many of the student teachers were present and they each took turns practice teaching. So I just have a few more clips of students talking about the different ways in which that practice teaching was exhibited. I referred to the student to teacher, the live teaching in the Zoom round robins, and then the third is that students pre-recorded classes that were then made available to the rest of the course. So here's one that is just between the student and the teacher.
Totally. Well, I mean, I definitely didn't give you the first one that I did, right? So there's an unnaturalness to it, I think, in general, when it's not live, when you have the availability to make it how you perceive you want it to be. I mean, at some point, I think after the second one, I was like, whatever, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
We're all human. But my perfection nature kind of set in, which I didn't really like. It's kind of like, okay, well, I have to do it perfectly because Daegis is watching, or, you know, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, after I was done, I was, oh, I should have said that instead of this, or, you know, you just kind of, I get in my head a little bit, rather than if I was just in a setting with a class, like it's what it is, and you know, you kind of allow yourself to be a little bit more imperfect, which I always appreciate.
So to me, what stood out in the interview I did with this student was this sense of being able to work towards perfecting the technique in the pre-recorded classes versus a sense that you don't have to be perfect when you're actually in front of people. The next is a student who submitted a video that was then shared with the remainder of the course that was pre-recorded.
There were a video posted of other students' videos. And also I think I signed up for the course like a week later. So I was able to see other people's videos before deciding how to approach mine. I liked how the last page you're able to reference all the videos in one place. I definitely rewatched most of the videos before deciding how to make my own video.
And so there you see that there was, even in the pre-recorded classes, there was a sense of communal learning in that they were able to see, the students were able to see how one another integrated the material and then taught it. And now this last clip is from a student describing teaching in the Zoom round robin format.
Teaching the smaller group classes, which totally blew my mind. Now I follow Gigi on Instagram. I was able to feel like I was heard and that I was actually working on something.
And so what stands out to me here is her saying that she was heard and that there's a real affirmative benefit in terms of the student's sense of themselves as a teacher when it comes to those Zoom round robin classes. And so finally we have praxis, and what is relevant when thinking about praxis is insightful teaching, interpersonal confidence, and the embodiment of the material. So to talk a little bit about that, I'm going to use Garrison Anderson Archer's practical inquiry model to articulate really the cycle that students went through to arrive at praxis and ultimately to go teach in their communities. So first was this triggering event, which was encountering the course and encountering the other students and the teacher. Self-practice, which was done independently. Written reflection, in which students had a chance to come to understand how what they were learning related to their lives. Communal learning, so the ways in which they were influenced by their fellow students. The feedback that they got and the trust that was built between them and their teachers. That the teaching is shared within the group, so within that sense of the safe space that the course created, and then independent teaching, that they would go out into their communities and teach it. So in summary, we have narrative as being really essential to create a sense of meaning, to help foster a sense of community, that everyone has a chance to tell their story, and as a way for students to be able to reflect on how what they're teaching relates to the deeper aspects of themselves. We have integration, which happens on an individual level and that more has to do with the objective aspect of learning and the technical aspect of learning, and then on the communal level, in which students were able to share their experiences and learn together. The student-teacher relationship being really primary to that integration. And that trust between the student and teachers and the students and one another help to foster that sense of integrating the material. And then with praxis, we have that there's insight. The students were able to gain insight into their own teaching and into their own interpersonal role within their communities. Embodiment, that they felt like they were really teaching something that was their own rather than just conveying information. And confidence. And I think confidence is really something that sums it up, because to me as an educator, confidence really comes when you feel as though you can be yourself in your teaching. And what I hope that you were able to gain from this presentation are just some techniques and strategies to help your students feel as though they can be themselves when they're teaching. I thank you very much for attending this presentation, and if you have any questions about it, please feel free to get in touch. Again, my name is Emil Sorger, and you can find my contact info through the conference.